Filing the FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid, is the first step to applying for and securing financial aid at a college. Though the financial aid application may seem overwhelming because it involves information found on tax forms, it actually only takes about 30 minutes to complete and is easier than it appears. We will take you through filing the FAFSA section by section and highlight any areas that you may want to pay special attention to. One of the biggest questions surrounding the FAFSA is which parent or parents should provide their information. If the biological or adoptive parents are married, they both need to include their financial information on the FAFSA. If the biological or adoptive parents are divorced, separated, or never married and living apart, only one of them should submit their information. That person should be the custodial parent. In regards to the FAFSA, the custodial parent is the one the student lives with 51% of the time or more. So wherever the student spends the majority of his or her time. If there is true 50-50 custody and the parents are unable to determine which one the student lives with the most, the next factor to consider is which parent provides more financial support for the student. So in the event of true 50% joint custody, defer to the financial support the student receives. So to recap that point, if the biological or adoptive parents are divorced, separated, or were never married and living apart, only one of them should list their financial information. However, if that biological or adoptive parent has remarried, the step-parent must also include their financial information. In this instance, the biological or adoptive parent has to list their current marital status, not a previous one. A recent change to the FAFSA involves biological parents that were never married but living together. If the parents are living together but unmarried, they both need to include their tax and asset information. For further information about which parent to provide financial information on the FAFSA form, please refer to the website listed. Before you sit down at the computer to file the FAFSA, it is advisable to collect all of the information you need. If you and your student have filed your previous year's taxes, have those handy, including a copy of all your W-2s. If you have not filed your previous year's taxes yet, use the last set of taxes you did file. You will need to provide Social Security numbers and birth dates for all individuals listed on the FAFSA form, as well as have a general idea for assets that either the parents or students have, including checking and savings accounts, money markets, mutual funds, CDs, stocks, bonds, 529 plans, UTMAs, UGMAs, trust funds, and equity in properties other than your primary residence. Be prepared to list the colleges and universities you wish to give access to your FAFSA form. You can always go back into the FAFSA and add or delete colleges at a later date, but you need to list at least one college to actually complete and submit the FAFSA. Both the student and one parent will need an FSA ID to electronically sign the FAFSA form. The student will need to establish one before beginning the FAFSA, but the parent can choose to wait until later on in the form if you choose. These FSA IDs consist of a username and password and should immediately be written down, as they often contain a different combination of password configurations than you may typically use. So now that you know what forms and information you need to complete the FAFSA, let's take a look at the form itself. Always make sure to visit FAFSA.gov when preparing to file your FAFSA. The FAFSA is free to file, and you will not incur a fee if you complete it on FAFSA.gov. If this is your first time filing a FAFSA form for this student, click on Start a New FAFSA. If the student does have a FAFSA on file and needs to update it, view a copy of their student aid report, or file a renewal FAFSA, click the Login button. You will be brought to this screen. Notice that there is a Help and Hints box on the right-hand side of the screen. Throughout the FAFSA, the help and hints listed will change to correspond with the section you are completing. If you are questioning what information should be provided in a specific field, click on the field and read through the information in the Helps and Hints column. If you need further clarification, you can contact the FAFSA hotline at 1-800-4-FED-AID. That's 1-800-4-FED-AID. To begin the FAFSA, enter the student's FSA username and password. If you do not have one already established, you must do so prior to beginning the FAFSA form. If you verified the email address, meaning that you entered the code received from the Federal Student Aid into the FSA ID website, then you must use the verified email address instead of the username when prompted for the FSA ID. If you did not enter the emailed code into the FSA ID website, then you must enter the username when prompted for the FSA ID. Click on the Next button to advance through the form. As a note, you will notice that there is a column on the left-hand side of the screen labeled Student. On some screens, it will say Student and have a blue color. On others, the column will be labeled Parent and is purple. This column refers to whose information needs to be entered into the fields. If you are ever unsure if the parent or student information should be entered, look to the side column for clarification. You will arrive at this screen. As you can see, there are two options to choose from when completing the FAFSA. Choose the year for which the student will be enrolling in college. If the student plans to enter college in the fall, he or she should complete the FAFSA listed on top. If the student plans to enroll in college for this academic year, choose the FAFSA listed second. In order to advance to the FAFSA form itself, you must create a save key. It is different than the FSA ID and is only saved until the FAFSA is submitted. Once you submit the form, you do not need to remember your save key. As a suggestion, use college as your save key. It is easy to remember and only remains until you complete and submit the FAFSA. If at any point you save your FAFSA, exit the form, and then need to log back in, you will be asked to provide your save key. If you do not remember your chosen save key, you can click on the hyperlink provided stating that you do not remember. In that case, you need to provide the student zip code. Once given, you will be asked to create a new save key. While this page provides some helpful information, you probably do not need to click on the hyperlinks to read the directions. This presentation will take you step by step through completing the FAFSA. When you are ready to continue to the actual FAFSA form, click the Next button. As you can see at the top of the screen, there are multiple tabs with different headings. Once you have completed a tab, you can always click on it to return and update or view information. However, you cannot advance through the form without completing all prior information. This first section, as noted on the side column, relates to the student. Their first and last names, along with their Social Security number and date of birth, have transferred over from the previous page. The student should also provide his or her middle initial, which tends to get overlooked. Click the box next to the appropriate gender and provide the student's permanent mailing address. The next question asks if the student has lived in the state for at least 5 years. Those years do need to be consecutive. Click Yes if he or she has. Click No if he or she has not. If the student has not resided in their state of residence for at least 5 years, another question will pop up. You will then have to list the month and year that the student did become a legal resident of the state. This information is utilized when determining access to in-state tuition. Every state has their own regulations regarding qualifying for in-state tuition, and the FAFSA just asks a general 5-year blanket statement for all states. Check with your state to determine your student's eligibility for in-state tuition. Next, you need to list a telephone number. This number can be a landline or a cell phone, whichever you choose to provide. If you wish to receive electronic copies of this form and electronic notifications, provide an email address. Many parents choose to list their email address in the student section, as it is the primary address. As a note, Federal Student Aid will email this address in subsequent years to remind you to file the FAFSA form. If you don't plan on having this email address next year, now is probably a good time to establish a permanent one. Students need to select their marital status. Pay close attention to your response, as many people provide incorrect information here. They want the student status, not the parent status. If the student is unmarried and has never been married, their status is single. The final question on this screen asks the student if he or she would like to provide their driver's license information. It is optional to provide this information, so many choose not to answer by selecting no. As a note, never click on the browser's back button or you will end your FAFSA session. Instead, click on the previous button located beside the next button. Also, click on the Save button before moving on to the next page. Doing so guarantees that your work will save in the event of a power outage or lost internet connection. You also do not need to complete the FAFSA in one sitting. You have up to 45 days from the date you begin the FAFSA to complete it. The next set of questions in the Student Demographics tab center around eligibility. First, answer if you are a U.S. citizen. U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens are eligible to receive federal student aid. Read the Helps and Hint column if you are unsure about your status or if you qualify for federal aid. If the student is male, he needs to disclose whether or not he has registered with the Selective Service. Male students must register with the Selective Service between the ages of 18 and 25 to meet one of the eligibility requirements for federal student aid. If he has not registered yet, he can select No and then choose to register now by selecting the Register Me option. Even if he is not yet 18, checking the box will ensure that the student will be registered and eligible for federal financial aid. Students can also register with Selective Service through the post office or other avenue if preferred. Choose the appropriate high school completion status, grade level upon entering college for the upcoming year, and which degree the student is currently working towards. If the student has taken eStart courses, Running Start courses, or any other college credit courses and was still a high school student when taking them, he or she is still considered a first-year college student. Answer if the student is interested in being considered for work study. The answers are yes, no, I don't know. It is advisable to list yes. It does not mean the student will definitely receive it or that the student will definitely use it if awarded work study. In fact, it just gives them the opportunity to see if they qualify. Click on the appropriate response to the question asking if the student has already obtained his or her first bachelor's degree. And finally, the last two questions are strictly survey questions and refer to the student's biological parent. It does not matter which parent considers themselves parent 1 and which one is parent 2. If you do not know the highest level of schooling that parent achieved, select I don't know. List the student's high school, city the high school is located in, and the state. Then click Confirm. All of the high schools listed for the city entered will appear. Click Select next to the high school you wish to choose. Doing so will populate the rest of the information needed on this screen. Students are able to list up to 10 college choices at a time on the FAFSA. If you want to send the form